In the words of the Deputy Secretary General, we know the facts, we know the solutions, so let us act. And the people we'll hear from now, from leading activists to leaders in the philanthropic world, are doing just that. They'll kick us off with a conversation unpacking the facts and solutions that could make transformative change a reality in this critical decade of action to deliver the global goals. And we may even get a sneak peek into the making of Nations United, a first-of-its-kind global broadcast that sheds new light on the urgency and the opportunity of the SDGs.
Hello, I'm Richard Curtis, writer, director, and UN Sustainable Development Goals advocate. It's absolutely wonderful to be here with Amina, one of my great heroes in life. Also good, because quite a few people think that my films have made the world a lot worse. So it's very good to be in a position of trying to make it better with the Sustainable Development Goals. And so, I'd like to join all of you and a welcome to this virtual SDG Action Zone. Very well named, because action's exactly what we need for the SDGs now. And I've really got a bit of a bee in my bonnet at the moment that we should almost start calling the Sustainable Development Goals the Sustainable Development Solutions, because they're not just a list of sort of nice dreams. They really are, it seems to me, a sort of belt and braces list of targets and actions that we absolutely must do. I'm very aware that we're living in the strangest of times in the middle of an unfolding tragedy, really, but I do think we have to hold our nerve and believe that, in change, and that in fact, sometimes a crisis produces amazing change. My favorite example is that Britain got its extraordinary NHS service immediately after the Second World War. It was a really brilliant abstraction of a democratic need that came from that big public trauma. So I'm very glad to be joined today by three friends of mine who both represent, as it were, the grassroots and the giants. So I would ask you to welcome, I'm not quite sure how, in their small, delightful boxes, actor Mirza, activist Ndopu, and president of Google.org, Jacquelline Fuller. I'm sure they'll just give their little waves. Now, a very fine wave there from Jacqueline. Before we start, if it's okay, I'd like to play a trailer for the United Nations United film that was just mentioned by the DSG. Very proud to be asked to make it by Amina. I think she does represent a really modern UN. And I think it's done something quite radical by commissioning this film to present tangible solutions that we can be guided by, that we can hold leaders accountable to. I do think it's a kind of action plan, as well as, if you watch it, I think you'll find there are some cracking performances by Burna Boy, by Beyonce, but also, it's wonderful to see Malala talking now, and to see the kind of passion that you get from real advocates like Don Cheadle and Forrest Whitaker and Tandy Newton. So here we go. This is Nations United.
This is a very important story. The important story. In the midst of COVID-19, it's an historic opportunity to look at the facts of the world as it is, and then to focus on the solutions to some of our greatest problems.
Today, we feel the weight of history on our shoulders.
The whole planet is at stake. The way we have been moving leads nowhere, and that we need to change course.
We need to reduce global emissions by 50% by 2030. This cannot go on. You know it, I know it, and we know what we need to do.
Poverty is not natural, it is man-made, so poverty is not inevitable.
Inequality for women is one of the world's great injustices, and it must be and will be swept away.
We are bringing young people to the table now, not as a token, but to take that baton, to take up the gauntlet, and to move forward.
Fear and hopelessness died. Strength, power, and courage was born.
It's a myth that each and every one of us doesn't have the ability to change the world dramatically and quickly. There is power in every decision we make.
In the 75 years since the United Nations was founded, the human race has never had to face a set of challenges like we do right now. But together, we can overcome them.
There we go, and you can see that film on some TV stations, but all the time on YouTube. And if you watch it, I hope you'll find it really interesting. Eddie, let's charge straight in, because one of the things the goals do is they try and organize all the kind of complex problems of the world into a game plan. So I just say to you, inequalities are at the core of so many of our world's problems, and they're absolutely at the core of the goals solutions. I'm really interested in how you, as a campaigner, faced by the myriad of problems, find the goals useful to you when you campaign.
Well, the SDGs represent a vision for the world that we want to live in. I think it's as simple as that. It truly is a remarkable vision that is our North Star. And I think what the COVID-19 pandemic has illuminated for all of us is that the same groups of marginalized communities bear the worst manifestations of crisis after crisis after crisis. Black and brown communities in both the global North and the global South are impacted. Indigenous people, women, people with disabilities. And so as somebody that embodies a multiplicity of identities and experiences, I am truly heartened by the fact that 17 SDGs represent an entire vision for a new world that is more equitable and sustainable for all.
Okay, I mean, I do think that's a brilliant answer, because I think the goals, you know, we kind of think about them as operating on this grand scale, but their aim is actually to affect individuals' lives and also give people their full potential. And as such, once people have got their full potential, then of course the world gets better because you're using every human on the planet. Jacqueline, I'm going to be a bit specific I've got a bit of a can-do attitude to things. I'm a huge fan of Google.org, and I'd love to hear, in terms of the goals, one of the things that you guys are supporting, are doing, that you think are pushing the goals forward.
Yeah, Richard, I love what you said about this is a moment for solutions. And, you know, as a tech company, we love thinking about moonshots. And so one of the things Google has taken on recently is, in being inspired by the global goals, we've said, let's set a real moonshot for sustainability for ourselves. And so we have set out a goal of being completely carbon free by 2030. So not carbon neutral, but carbon free 24/7. And the cool thing about this goal is that right now it's technically not possible. And so this is really a goal that's going to charge us to have innovation, partnerships, sharing ideas, sharing technology. Our artificial intelligence team is going to try to come up with better solutions and then share them to the world. So this is exactly what the SDGs do, though, is they inspire us to set moonshots and say, hey, we can come together as a world and create new solutions.
Yeah, no, and I'm a great believer in deadlines. I would never have finished one film if there hadn't been deadlines. And I think that is, I mean, at its most simple, that's one of the things about the goals. They're meant to be pushing the time scale as much as they can. Dia, I'm going to turn to climate for a second here, because one of the things I'm really grateful for with the goals is they pushed me into thinking through climate. I used to think, a lot of people did, well, you're either a development person or a climate person, but that's clearly not true. Will you give me a sense of how you relate to the goals and climate, and where they think they're most you think they're most useful to campaigners?
Richard, honestly, before this crisis hit us, every time people would ask me what is the most important goal to me, I would always say climate action. And I always believed that without climate action, none of the other goals can be delivered in reality. Because the fact of the matter is that we are confronted by an existential crisis. Climate is changing. And the climate crisis impacts all lives, and especially lives who live in people who live in marginalized communities, developing countries. It affects gender, it affects every possible challenge that we are faced with. So the most important goal to me is climate action. And I think what this crisis has done is that it has put in focus the fact that all life on Earth is connected, that our well-being, our peace, our progress, basically everything that the goals hope to achieve is connected with nature and the ecological balance. And the fact that we have disrupted as much as we have, the way we've conducted business, the way we've developed as a race, the attitude and the approach we've had can no longer continue. So I really, with all my heart, hope that climate action becomes the center of focus for everyone to achieve the rest of the goals. Because it won't be possible to achieve any of the other goals if we don't do that.
I mean, that's so interesting you say that about, climate being so key. I completely agree. I think one of the things about the pandemic is I think it's probably made people believe that really bad things can happen, as if we needed to learn. Do you know what I mean? But when you see the disease flooding through New York, you maybe do start to think, well, wait a second, New York might flood. You've actually seen a bad thing unfold, but also people coming together and taking actions, radical actions that they would never have done before. It's interesting, Jacqueline, that your net zero thing is kind of to do with climate as well. If we can bend away from that, I mean, are you focusing, if you look at the other things like particularly sort of diversity and gender and poverty, is there another thing there that you'd like to tell us that where you've got a kind of, where you're doing a moonshot?
Well, I think the other area, Richard, is, as we all come together and say, what can we do to help achieve these global goals? We also have to look at what are our unique strengths and what do we bring? So as a technology company, as a data company, we also think about, are there specific gaps where Google could come in and play a particular role? So with the COVID crisis, one thing that we've done is come alongside researchers and invest the resources, because these heroes on the front lines do need the funding and the resources. But in addition to that, we've been sending our Googlers, our employees, our engineers, our artificial intelligence experts, sending them out to groups like, for example, Health Map, which is a nonprofit that's based out of Boston's Children's and also Oxford. It's multinational effort, and they're tracking COVID. They're tracking using a lot of different data sources to understand what is happening now with COVID-19. Where is it headed? What are the solutions that we would like to see? So I think the key is for all of us, whether we're a company or a community, individuals, to think about how can we uniquely participate. And for Google, we're really looking to see where we can help leverage technology for the SDGs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting. I think one of the big changes in the world is that people are asking this question, what can I actually do? So I think, when I started, you gave to charity. I set up a charity, you left it to someone else. And then I did a movement called Make Poverty History. And you were saying, well, it's really the government's job. And now I just noticed, talking particularly younger people, that they're saying, in the clothes they buy, in the food that they eat, in the way that they travel. I mean, I've just got obsessed by money, and I've just moved my pension and my bank account to make sure that we're with, ethical and sustainable funds. And I do think that's a point to everyone listening. Don't just look out, look in. I mean, Dia, if I can ask you that question. I mean, I was shocked. The last movie I made, we had a sustainability officer on the set every day telling us,
Yeah, why would we?
what exactly. I mean, are you finding in your life and what can I ask you what you think you're doing as a person as well as a campaigner, as an example of what we can do to change the world a bit ourselves?
Well, Richard, quite frankly, I believe that the world will only change when we change ourselves. So it does start with individual action and choice that we can make every day. The effort, of course, is to find ways to live more sustainably every day, to become aware and conscious of my patterns of consumption. And of course, as a filmmaker, how do we produce? How do we work as a business? What are the choices we're making every day? And to use that understanding and that awareness. So I'll give you a small example. When we were working on a campaign to beat plastic pollution, we trended something called #TheTravelingBottle. It's become a style statement today, but I'm really glad for it because more and more people are refusing to use single-use, plastic bottles and are carrying their own water to work, to the gym, to meetings, to every place they need to be. So I think that for everybody who's an activist, and I engage so much with young people, and they tell me this again and again, we may have overshot the mark for accepting individual action. We need decisive global response to the climate emergency. Yes, individual actions count. Every drop forms the ocean. It will make a big difference when we refuse to invest in non-sustainable organizations, when we refuse to, consume things that are polluting to the environment. But at the same time, we really need to push stronger environmental laws, stronger policy, engage with corporations and industries to make better choices because, at the end of the day, until that happens, the individual action will count for something, but it won't count for everything because we don't really control everything.
No, I think that's true. I mean, obviously, that's incredibly important and we should work at all levels. I am inspired by this idea that we have got a new consumer revolution coming soon now. And that actually, because business is one of the core areas which is going to change the world either well or badly, particularly after COVID. And as consumers, we can bend businesses, and certainly politicians listen more to businesses than they do to people like me. Eddie, on this specific thing, I'm talking to you in South Africa now?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, if you were talking about private action there, what would you say to your compatriots? What do you think, for a person in South Africa, what are the things that they should be doing that will have an effect on the goals? I'm interested what your priorities are there for private action.
Well, for us, I think for any marginalized group or marginalized communities, the most important things that we can do is to continue taking up space. I think the work of representation is to facilitate transformation. And that's exactly what this moment is inviting us to do, is to completely overhaul and reimagine the systems as we have come to live in them. And so it really is about ensuring that as a person with a physical disability myself, who is, very vigilant about the pandemic, it's about naming these communities, not allowing these communities to not only be made to disappear from public view, but to be made to disappear from the discourse. We need to name these communities and we need to be explicit about who we're talking about, identify these voices and amplify these voices as loudly as we possibly can. And so that's part of what I seek to do through my advocacy here.
And what forums do you find this most effective in? If you've got, let's just say the goals are a weapon, which battle do you use it in? I mean, have you found places where by having the goals and the fact they really have been agreed by every country in the world, they are a promise, they've got a deadline, do you find them a useful weapon in battle?
Absolutely. The goals are incredibly useful because we can hold people accountable to what they signed. But beyond that as well, and I think this is what it's really important for people to understand, the goals are not some abstract public policy endeavor, a public policy enterprise, these are very personal. This is about dignity, it's about agency, it's about self-actualization as a human being. It's about my ability to breathe freely in the world, right? Like that's really what the goals are about. And so linking these large goals about hunger, poverty, education, gender equality, climate action, innovation, all of those are about illuminating the full humanity of all of us. And so framing the goals and making it as personal as possible, and then connecting them to the big systems and institutions that we're trying to navigate, that has been profoundly useful in the work that I do.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what about you in India, dear? Are you finding the goals a useful weapon? Are you part of spreading them around there?
Absolutely, Richard. Lots of plenaries, webinars, engaging with government institutions, private institutions, schools, colleges, universities. And I find that more and more education systems are adopting the goals. I've also tried to use my Instagram platform to have conversations regularly with people who are actually amplifying the goals or doing things that are, related or connected with the goals, celebrating that. So
right.
Bringing back the narrative and the focus to the goals in every way possible. And I find that, this is altruism, and it's something that the goals to me are altruistic in nature. It's something that, yes, like Eddie says, connects with us at a personal level. And it's also something that nobody would really deny or not want to achieve. And because I feel the way they are structured, and you've said this yourself, Richard, I think it's conveyed so powerfully in the film that you made, Nations United, where the goals offer solutions. And I think that that's the most wonderful aspect about the goals, that this is not some abstract idea. These are tangible, achievable goals that provide you solutions. All we need to do is adopt them, understand them, and work with them. And I was engaged, I was in a session with the railways in India recently. And it was fantastic, Richard, because there were thousands of people who were a part of it. They've obviously adopted the goals, and it was exciting to see how they were going to implement or show ground action in implementation of the goals. And there's something that I meant to bring up in our meeting yesterday, but I didn't have enough time. But a lot of people have been asking, especially activists and young champions of the goals, have been asking, is there some kind of a measure, some kind of a system we can put in place where companies, individuals, organizations can kind of go in there and tick and say, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Now, how sustainable is my lifestyle? Can I measure what progress I'm making with achieving the goals?
Well,
I think that's an idea, and we should try and find a way to implement it.
And companies who've tried to do that do find it a really useful, as it were, SATS test, a really useful mark, and they're often surprised how many of them relate to their behavior. Jacqueline, just in terms of Google's in your name, just in terms of getting it out there, what do you think about that? What's the thing that you're most excited about trying to sort of spread the goals as a concept, as a famous thing? Because obviously my hope is they get more and more famous over these 10 years. Is that something that you're working on as well?
Look, in my world, when I talk to other founders and entrepreneurs, innovators, they want to know two things, the what and the how. And what's really great about the goals is you've sort of solved the what, right? We have moonshots. We have a very clear blueprint. As you said earlier, Richard, these are solutions. And so that just takes that off the table, and so that we don't have to waste time reinventing the wheel. And then they get to focus on what they tend to be good at, which is creating new value, new ideas, innovations. They focus on the how. They ask the question, okay, who am I as an individual? What's my company? What's my community? What's my network? Where's my social capital? Where can I personally invest? Where can my company make a difference? And one of the things that we've seen at Google is that it's a positive, virtuous cycle because our employees are very personally motivated. about achieving these global goals. They care deeply. And as they are so proud that Google is working towards these, they want to be a part of it. We've had to completely revamp how we do our work to enable more Googlers to come in and be part of the teams that we send out and embed in the various nonprofits, because they want to be personally engaged. So from a corporate perspective, this is wonderful because you're actually feeding your employees, you're giving them that sense of purpose, you're energizing them as part of their daily work. They want to be proud of the work that you're doing. They want to be part of these solutions. So we're both figuring out how, how Google can plug in, how we can come alongside other partners, because of course, no company's going to make progress on this alone. We have to work alongside governments, alongside influencers, the YouTube community, for example. We have YouTube influencers who care so deeply about this, and they're using their voice. We're having several of them work on the Action Zone, the SDG Action Zone. They've got tens of millions of followers. They're going to inspire their followers, their community, to ask that question. And I love what Eddie said. This is not about like some public policy effort. This is about giving people my ability to breathe freely in this world. And that is so inspiring to people.
Yeah, I really do think that it's such a positive thing. I was talking to Mark Carney about the goals. I talk to everyone about the goals. But he said to me, he said, one of the real risks to companies now is not being involved in them, that actually people are finding that if employees find you haven't got a purpose, they'd rather not work for that company. And if consumers find out you haven't got a purpose, they'd rather not work. They'd rather not buy your goods. So this idea that it's actually, it's that thing of, it's not money versus morals anymore. It's not value versus values. It's actually a thing which is going to help you do better business, as well as, lead a better life, leading to a better world. So look, I think you've all shown, it's been a great talk, because I think, I can see a deep belief in all of you, but also a practical application. And that's what I wanted to give a sense of straddling here. You've got these great big goals, the great big UN, and then our lives, and then how actually you can help make changes that will achieve the goals. So I'm going to finish with a quick fire one, which is just people watching this. What's the one thing you would get them to do tomorrow? What I used to say is, read the goals, but I'm not going to say that. So my weird one is going to be make sure that your money, if you've got it, is invested according to the goals. This is such a big one, because the prospect of using, in a way, the problem of COVID to make businesses rethink the world that they're working in, and actually make sure that pension money and bank money are going into all the businesses that are doing the best thing. I think that's a real good new tool to go along with your consumer power. But Dia, if there's one thing you could say to people out there, here's a thought. Tomorrow, why don't you? Obviously, I'd like people to watch Nations United as well. But what would you have them do?
Well, start off with reading and understanding the goals and adopt them immediately, because we can at an individual level. And find one goal that resonates most deeply with you and act on it every day, because you can.
Yeah, for people, that's one of the things. You don't have to do all 17.
Okay.
But pick one and fight for it. I agree with that so much. Eddie?
If you can and you are able and you find yourself in the front of the line of opportunity, step aside and amplify the voices of those that are furthest behind the line of opportunity.
Okay, that is a really important thing. And I feel that movement too. A lot of people, I'm an old white guy. And when you say to people, what are you doing? They do say, one of the things they're saying is, I'm stepping aside. I'm trying to let other voices be heard. And I think that is it's strange, but that is such an important action, because you create a space for someone else. Jacqueline, have you got one top tip for a goal lover?
I'm going to say email your CEO. Do it tomorrow. Look at what your company does, what you're uniquely good at, map that to the goals, and find that shared value, that win-win, where you together with everyone that you work with can really make a difference. And I bet your CEO is going to be interested in your idea.
Okay, well, I would love that. 1,000 letters to 1,000 busy CEOs with the word goals in it is my dream. Look, I'd like to thank all of you. You're a very, interestingly different group from 3 different continents, all committed, 4 including me. So all committed to the goals. I would recommend to everyone to, follow as many things in the SDG zone as you possibly can. You'll always pick up good stuff. And I suppose my final thing would be, to remember, as you change things, you really do affect specific lives. I think one of the things I'm always concerned about is as you move into the generality of politics, you forget the particularity of kind of people's lived lives. And I think one of the things that COVID has made us so aware of is people in our community who it's our job to protect by our simple behaviors. And I do think that the simple behavior of fighting for the goals protects, boosts, and reinforces the opportunities in this little community we live in called planet Earth. So thank you all very much indeed for being here today. And I know I'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.